and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? And I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
Now,
live from Chicago, the Hal Sparks radio program Mega Worldwide.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass.
Hal Sparks, actor, comedian, and multimedia personality.
And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Hal Sparks.
All right, let's do this.
Oh my goodness, the week that has been going on from the sublime to the ridiculous. This week has been a veritable
ridiculous.
It's been a veritable Chinatown plot point of stories. My sister, my daughter, she's my sister and my daughter. Which, you know, being from Kentucky, I kind of take it personally, that scene. But anyways, from the horrible atrocities committed by Russian soldiers and their Chechnyan and I guess Syrian backups in Ukraine that came to light this week with the bombing of the train station and the reports of admitted sexual assaults by Russian soldiers to their moms back home on unsecured phone lines, because you always have a problem. Johnny Million, you should know this more than anybody as a student of Sun Tzu and the art of war. That one of the things you do is you secure them communications.
Important.
You do two things. You destroy your enemy's ability to communicate, and then you make sure that your communications are super secret, double covert, undercover, coded, non-transmissible.
Russian soldiers are confessing to their parents that they've committed sexual assault?
And their girlfriends, that they witnessed it. Oh my gosh, Hal Vickery, thank you so much for the super chat. More than I'd usually give during the middle of a month, but I'm celebrating Ketanji Brown Jackson and my second COVID booster, he says. We're glad about that, and we're very excited. We will be getting to the wonderful talk of Ketanji Brown Jackson now becoming an associate justice of the Supreme Court.
That's the sublime part.
Yes, that's exactly it. Yeah. And there's plenty of ridiculous. I will say that considering, like with jobs numbers, the fact that inflation in the United States, based on what's going on around the world, is amazingly low is an amazing story. But but on the ridiculous side of the scale, it's off the charts. We are definitely listing to port in terms of ridiculous storylines. Not the least of which is, of course, these reports, these communications coming from Russian soldiers back home that are being intercepted by the Ukrainians because these people are calling their relatives from cell phones taken from dead civilians that they themselves may have been involved in killing, or using landlines in buildings they have taken over. So far, and this is only like what they know of, the Ukrainians have killed 7 Russian generals. That at last count. It may be as high as 9, but the other 2 have not been confirmed yet. Apparently, Russia's rethinking this whole send your generals to the front business, but a little too late. And in the process of doing that, one of the reasons why in the world do you think the Ukrainians would be able to hit and find the location of the generals of the Russians? Well, it's because those guys are calling Russia on cell phones that are not secure and being targeted by airstrikes and by mortar rounds and artillery, because they're basically, it's like they're walking around with one of, those Mac little pocket tags that you can get now for your keys that chirp when you find your keys. They're great. I have a couple of them. And interestingly enough, I left my keys in my girlfriend's car, in Summer's car, and she was driving around and she got a message on her phone that somebody has put one of these tags in your car. You're being followed by one of these tags.
Oh shit.
Which is, you can't swear like that. You can't.
You can't swear like that.
You can't do that. Devin has to dump that, and now we got to wait for it to catch up. We got a whole 7 seconds.
All right, now we can work
It
on
is-
our reset.
Yes, we can. By the way, you're watching and listening to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. We're here every Saturday, and normally Johnny doesn't swear, but that's an extraordinary thing.
I think that's my first.
It is. I think it's your first on-air fail. We're very impressed. In all these years, everybody gets one mulligan, right? So, but this is true. When for those of you that are just catching up on radio, thank you for the super chat, Daphne. By the way, she says, "No, Johnny Million, you are the sublime part." And she says, "Rest in peace, Eric Bollert, who passed away this week in a bicycle accident, which was shocking and horrifying."
Oh, that's awful. I didn't know that's what it was.
Yes, still can't get my head around his untimely death. She says, "A tragic loss to the progressive movement." No question. Just, I mean, beloved by everybody who knew him. So one of the most absurd things about what's going on in Russia is I think if you referentially look back, if you look back at what was said about Vladimir Putin during the Trump years, well, at least he's a strong leader. Well, at least he knows what he's doing. At least he's better than Trump said on multiple occasions that Vladimir Putin is a strong leader. He knows how to control his country. He's got, he's tough. He basically broke into Macho Man every time he walked in.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And yet, it does not seem like that is the case at all. Vladimir Putin, apparently, like any autocrat or dictator who who starts sniffing their own farts. Snarts came out of that word. I formed a new word. He's snarting. He's snarting. Yeah, who's high on his own stash of butt wind. Because he has been isolating himself during COVID out of fear that it will do terrible things to him. And never mind the paranoia I feel personally that for whatever reason, the Chinese and the Russians have been very linked during this process. They have more issues than I can get into today. But on this level, they've been very much simpatico around this. And the Chinese and Russian panic around COVID seems really extreme, considering the number of deaths they have allegedly had in their country. The leaders themselves seem extraordinarily fearful of it, considering that, they believe they have vaccines and treatments and the like. It's curious. It's almost as if...
Poo Picker Upper said, "I like snarts."
Snart, yeah. He's snarting. Snarting is now a word. So this person has been sniffing their own farts. This is someone who snarts. We created a sniglet, and I'm very proud.
And we find out later that Devin is just like bleeping the heck out of the show.
Yeah, that's right. None of it's making it to air. There's the whole show. Yeah. So, but this illusion that he has that Putin is not only a strong leader, but that he's a strategic leader. That he's not a paranoid lunatic who's locked himself in a room. Like Howard Hughes peeing in mason jars and growing his fingernails out while he fears cockroaches.
I know his strategy.
What's that?
He has zero empathy for anybody else. He's insanely selfish and will do anything to anybody to solve the problem that's right under his nose.
Yeah. That's what Donald
most humans won't do.
That's what Donald Trump would refer to as a strong leader.
Yep.
Say what you will about him, but he's also smart and together as a fella. He likes riding horses bareback. He's got a sexy ballerina contortionist girlfriend that he keeps in a love nest in London, like a low rent heterosexual Jimmy Savile, and apparently he makes 146,000 US a year and his salary, and yet is the richest man in the world. 200 billion net worth allegedly. Now, I'm sure that's been cut in half in the last couple of months, and he can't reach the rest of it. So that's fascinating, and that's another story as well. We got to take a break. When we come back, I would like to dive into this some. And I would also like to dive into the fact that it is, we've often heard birds of a feather flock together, have we not? And there's been a lot of, flocking going on in the world of Trump and Putin over the years. And their entire plan, both of them, it was flocked from the beginning. And if you look at the parallels between the Jan 6 insurrectionists and what we are now finding out about Don Jr.'s text to Mark Meadows post-election,
We have all the power.
and the power, and forethought and strategery that they had, and then you look at how the Russians are doing in Ukraine. Maybe there's a reason why these two leaders got along so well. Maybe there's a reason why Kim Jong Un launched a phony missile a couple of weeks ago and got along with, he basically launched the missile version of Trump's Truth Social into the Sea of Japan.
I didn't even hear about it.
Oh yeah, well that's how good it was. You mean Truth Social or the nuclear or the ICBM?
The ICBM, that's crazy. All right, we gotta go to break.
We got to go to break. This is the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. We are on infotainmentwars.com. Who needs the documents? I've got it all memorized. And, of course, twitch.tv/Hal Sparks if you got young'uns who like this kind of thought, who are still living at home and yet could be out on their own, quite frankly. They legally could be out, and they're not. Well, they know what Twitch is, and they can subscribe on there. Twitch.tv/Hal Sparks. If you have Amazon Prime, it doesn't cost you a dime. We'll be back right after this.
Attention, stop what you're doing. Because we're coming back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Oh my God!
They went a little crazy with it, and I appreciate it.
Now let's get back with Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Now, some people may or may not know that I wake up every day and I try to cultivate a sense of gratitude. It's something I learned from The Secret, and I've kept it for a long time. I even sometimes will, as a reminder, I'll carry a gratitude rock in my pocket, just rub it when I just remind myself of all the things that I have to be, happy about and grateful for in my life. Count your blessings. That's what I say. And one of the ones that I added a little over a year ago was, thank God that the attempted coup of our government on January 6th and the lead up to it was strategized and implemented by the dumbest people on earth. Unequivocally, if there had been a brain among any of these idiots, we might be in big trouble as a country. Genuinely.
Yeah.
But since everyone involved was so magnificently stupid, I honestly, the only worry I had on January 6th was for the physical safety of the people there, but not for our democracy or our government as a whole. There was no way. As a matter of fact, the actions of these idiots was so ham-handed and so terrible and so blatantly awful that it guaranteed that all the delay tactics that Ted Cruz and all these nudniks had put together were going to be thrown completely out the window. And it was like, all right, enough. We need to count these electoral votes and just move on because this is gross. Any chance they had to soften this blow or slow down the process, which we now know, according to texts that Don Jr. sent to Mark Meadows, understand the people involved in this and go, oh, thank God that the strategy was implemented and put in place by Don Jr. and carried to Trump via Mark Meadows, like the lamest people and with the weakest idea of just conceptually of strategy and functional battle plans. Like, honestly, and it's a good thing, quite frankly, that there were no major, military actions that need be taken during the Trump years, because he would have been the worst person to do it. I mean, obviously, the Syrian bombings in response to the gas attacks, where he was basically calling Russia and going, move out of those 2 buildings, and which of the runways do you not use anymore because it's too short? Okay, we're going to bomb that one and those 2 buildings. So move your guys across the street. We'll do a surgical strike that you won't even feel a hot wind. And they did, and then we gave them the base. Boink. So these are the same people who had a plan for January 6th, man. They were ready, they knew the next morning, they knew weeks before, by the way, that Trump was going to lose, because their own internal polls had them panicking, which is why Trump was like, it's going to be rigged. It's rigged. It's riggedy, rigged. The reason he had to say that was because he knew he was losing. Everybody told him, you got to, literally, within the last 6 weeks of the leading up to the election, everybody at their strategy meeting was just basically like, so where do we get boxes? that was the strategy meeting for the final 6 weeks of the campaign. Do we move our stuff into storage and then to the other place, or at what point do they literally cut off rent in my office? Can I sleep in my office for a couple of weeks while I search for an apartment? Like, the staff was everybody had a foot out the door. Everybody was planning to leave, right? So the beauty of the idiocy is something that I'm just grateful for every day. That this all relied. Somebody's yelling, like, EO in our chat room says, "Is U-Haul open yet?" I'm like, what time does U-Haul open the day after the election? I think they open at 9, but it might be noon. You should call, right? So Don Jr. apparently was sending texts to Mark Meadows. The crucial one on November 5th was, it's very simple. We have multiple paths. We control them all. Which is true. So the fact that they couldn't or didn't is amazing. They didn't have multiple paths. They had no paths. There were no paths. But they did control the paths and could artificially create, bulwarks or dam up the process. And he was saying we have operational control, total leverage, total lack of punctuation, by the way. Moral high ground. POTUS must start second term now. Moral high ground, whatever that means. Please. The idea that Donald Trump and moral high ground, just, okay. POTUS must start second term now. Now, the idea with that one was, momentum will kill this. Let's just start acting like we won. Let's just go for it. And then as we go for it, we'll send the electors back. We'll do all this stuff. And basically, he's already planning his thing. And it'll be like, Bush v. Gore, where everybody had already moved on about Florida. The Supreme Court had stopped the count and all this stuff. When the count was finally done, after everything was certified, Gore had won by 500 votes. He won Florida by a hair's breadth, but he did. And therefore, he would have won the Electoral College, and that would have put him in the White House. And but the nation had moved on. And Bush had already been sworn in. Also, the other lesson from this, which apparently the Trump crowd could never bring themselves to learn, that once the dude is sworn in, you got to wait till the next election. We have a system of government. Sorry, that's why Bush was president his first 4 years. He got reelected, but the first one, Gore won that one, technically. But because of how it played out, and the fact that George Bush was sworn in as president, you don't get another bite at that apple for 4 years. So apparently that lesson they totally didn't get. But in this particular instance, they are genuinely talking about the fact that they think that they can just mow through the next few months, act as if we won. We just won. We won. Say we won. That's what Rudy Giuliani had also texted. Just say you won and keep moving forward. And at some point, the American people are lazy and don't care about freedom or their system of government at all. We've all fallen back into morbidly obese app people who believe that government should be swipe left or swipe right, and anything more with any more effort than that isn't worth our time. Blow it off, and we won't. And we'll deflate the voting public, and that'll help us in the election for these senators that's coming up. That was their argument, that the American people suck. The MAGA crowd and the America First argument was, if we just bore the American people into believing he's still president, they'll go, oh, well, and that'll be it. And that was what they were texting to each other. So he said Trump told Meadows he could file lawsuits and push for recounts in certain swing states to prevent them from certifying their results. They tried all that stuff. Didn't work. They did automatic recounts because of the narrow margin in some states, but even in the ones with the greater margin where the Republicans are like, we couldn't have possibly lost. Donald Trump is the most famous and powerful and interesting and sexy and strong and smart person that has ever lived. He and the land are one. He pulled the sword from the stone. He is the king. And because of that, he must have won. So, oh my God, count it again. Count it again. Turn those machines back on. Sell, sell, sell. And so it didn't. They right. It was the Dukes the whole time. So he said Republican legislatures could step in and put forward fake Trump electors. Another thing they did actually try. The whole thing's there, right? Republicans control Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, North Carolina, etc. We get Trump electors, said Trump Jr. in his text. That didn't turn out to be the case either. That's not how they work. And also the electors they don't get to bully the rest of the state. This is not a small version of like landowner fiefdom in feudal England. That's, the electors don't get to go, these serfs don't know what they're talking about. This is a rotten borough and I'm in charge. I'll tell you what they really wanted. Why am I losing? I don't hear you, Johnny Million, for some reason. I'm not getting audio from you for some reason. You're like choppy or something. There you are. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. It's the House Park Radio program, Mega Worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. So I'm reading this article. CNN got these texts, apparently, or got a good look, gander at them, and we're able to CC them to a bunch of different news organizations. And we're continuing with the Don Jr. texts, which basically lay out everything we saw in the months coming from November 10th on, when the panic had set in and they knew they were losing, right? So Republicans control 28 states, Democrats control 22 states, Trump Jr. wrote, referring to what happens when there's a tie in the Electoral College with each state delegation in the House casting a single vote. Once again, Trump wins, the former first son added. I love the former part. I'm glad they added that part. We either have a vote we control or we win, or it gets kicked to Congress 6 January 2021, which is, again, it gets kicked to Congress on that day. If they can make that happen, they can send the fake electors, or if they can stop it until the fake electors arrive and then they seize it up, then they can make it just a single vote per state. And since there are 28 red states with way fewer people in them, the red states, by the way, that he's talking about have fewer people than the minus, I suppose, Texas. The other 27 have fewer people combined than LA, San Francisco, and Seattle and Chicago. And they would all those states would have a single vote, and California, Washington State, and Illinois would have one each, right? Mm-hmm. Trump Jr.'s lawyer, Alan Futerfas, really? Futerfas disputed whether the messages were written by him. After the election, Don received numerous messages from reporters, supporters, and others. Given the date, this message likely originated from someone else and was forwarded. So the defense, again, from the Trumps is, this wasn't my dumb idea. I just passed it on. As if that's a defense. That's kind of extraordinary. I mean, it's par for the course. You know, this isn't crap because I thought it up. Someone else thought it up, and it's crap, and it just sounded good to me, right? What Trump Jr. floated was attempted during the following weeks. Trump's legal team, led by former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani, again, even at the general level, there's so many parallels between the Russian attempt to attack Ukraine and the Jan 6 wannabes in their the idiocy of the upper echelon. It's amazing. Trump's legal team filed more than 60 unsuccessful lawsuits challenging the count based on the then president's unfounded election fraud claims. The lawsuits weren't enough to keep electors from meeting on December 14th to determine Biden the winner of the Electoral College. On the same day, however, alternate electors met in swing state capitals and voted for Trump, which was adorable and illegal. Hey, Johnny, how about this? Why don't we just preemptively declare ourselves electors no matter how the next election goes? I'll just say it. You're an elector. I'm an elector. We're pro-Democrat electors, and we'll just go. And we don't even have to live in the state, you know, because
we'll go to Indiana and go for things.
Yeah. All right. What's the big deal? You know, you can carpet bag your way through this too. So what do you say a bunch of us all just declare ourselves electors and go to Tennessee and just go, yeah, Tennessee, I know how you normally vote red, but we've decided we're going to be your electors. Get out of here. All right. Trump Jr. also told Meadows he should, quote, fire Ray, fire Fauci. Again, this is something that Trump has promised to try and make happen when he becomes president again, which is the president has the ability to fire any appointed or a confirmed member of the government at any level, which is just, I mean, again, a recipe for just idiotic dictatorship. There's a reason why there's checks and balances on this. He has the ability to get rid of people, but there is a process to put someone else in. You can't just knock somebody out and put in a loyalist, knock somebody out and put in a loyalist. That slows the roll. That would, in the old parlance, that would be a conservative way of running your government, because you don't want everything to just be willy-nilly, libertine, slapdash. I don't like you anymore, Jeff Sessions. Who can we find? Who can be my Roy Cohn? You're in. Like that kind of stuff. You have to get past at least some checks and balances.
Make the Democrats way more conservative because they're all standing on the rooftops going, "Can we follow the rules?"
Yeah, exactly. Right. So in reference to FBI Director Chris Wray and Anthony Fauci, both men remain in their positions to this day. Again, can we have a moment of gratitude and thankfulness that this entire scheme was run by morons, top to tails, fish stunk from the head and still does. Thank you for subscribing, ophthalmologists. And don't forget to subscribe, by the way, at infotainmentwars.com. We're trying to drive our numbers up. I'm competing against people with millions of subscribers who've been doing this for a decade. And we're doing really well. We're at 31,000 plus on YouTube alone, which is great. And we're trying to get to 1,000 on Twitch, which is always an ice skate uphill. So if you feel like doing that, or you're on any of those platforms, give us a subscribe. If you're on Facebook, like the page, follow the Hal Sparks page there as well, and you can watch the stream from wherever you're most comfortable. I bring my show to the audience. That's what I do. Yeah, and if you're listening on WCPT on the radio, good for you. Program that button into your car. Just it happens one of two ways. Modern cars, you just push the button and hold it, and it'll automatically do it. Other cars, you have to hit set and then do it, but it's that simple. I mean, honestly, you can do it. All right, so the House voted in December to hold Meadows in contempt, but the Department of Justice is yet to act on that charge. He was found in contempt because he's not showing up. The texts were part of a tranche. It's one of my favorite words, by the way. Tranche. Yes, the French don't have a word for tranche. Shared by Meadows with the House Select Committee on January 6th and shared with CNN. This, again, the pile of doofuses brings us in many ways as a great segue to Russia and the fact that the Russian plan looks like it was coordinated on Truth Social by Rudy Giuliani, Lev and Igor, Don Jr., and Trump himself. Because it's foobar from top to tails. It's a mess. And the myth of Russian military superiority has been laid bare for the entire world in such a way that Russia, in theory, much like the United States, if we were in some sort of conflict, we could pull troops from areas of the world, bases in Qatar, for example, or Germany or something like that. We could move those people around. And the reason we could move those people, those military, either fighting forces or service personnel, intergovernmental, ambassador staff, we can move those people around the world because the function of those bases will not lessen strictly because there are a few less people there. Nobody's going to question the tenacity of a military base that the U.S. has based on how many people are in it, really. I mean, obviously, if there's a skeleton crew of 25 people, some ISIS groups might see that through some binoculars and decide to take a shot. But it's not the same thing. Russia has military forces in Georgia, in Chechnya, in all of the stands, all along their Chinese border, in Kazakhstan, along the Chinese-Kazakh border, to deal with and repel genuine forces in those areas at all times. For all the talk about our southern border and there's an invasion at our southern border that the Republicans are talking about, as because women and children running from gang violence who are seeking asylum is the same as tanks amassing on the Ukrainian border, according to Republicans, which is yet another reason why you would never let them be in charge of anything that matters ever again. That Russia really does have ongoing conflicts in multiple places. And if they lost ground to that, if they pulled back any of those forces, the Georgians, the Chechens might see their moment. Even the Kazakhstan government might shift if they have an insufficient military force in and around the border of that country and interacting with the installed government of those countries. Basically, what happened in Ukraine over the course of since 2014 would start to happen in all these areas if they didn't have soldiers present. So they can't pull those, and those guys are the most battle-hardened, are the most, strategically necessary. They're the high-end soldiers in this. These are the guys with some time in the military. They're not green recruits. And they can't afford to take them from any of those areas and send them to Ukraine. Because A, they're going to die and are irreplaceable. And B, they will leave gaps for the other attacks to happen. Now, we got to take a break. When we come back, I want to discuss the Russian demographic issue that is the primary reason why Ukraine, why now. It is one of the things that I've mentioned it on my live stream. Some people know that this is one of my areas where I like to look at the details around this stuff. And there are some surprising reasons. I think some people will be shocked at why Russia did this now, and the fact that it had nothing to do with NATO expansion. Nothing to do with any of the predicates that they've been talking about. Nothing to do with the speech even that Putin gave. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide, on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk.